Welcome to the A.D.H.Deep-Dive, the show that's not about ADHD but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund. I'm an actor, director, musician, photographer, and host of the A.D.H.Deep-Dive. And this week I'm joined by Gil Scott Chapman. Gil is the son of a former NFL football player. He's a touring jazz musician and a resident pianist at Mackinac Island's Grand Hotel. In this episode, Gil and I chat about his journey toward creative independence, his experiences as a student at the Interlochen Arts Academy, and we deep dive into Gil's pursuits beyond music. So thank you for joining this episode of the A.D.H. Deep Dive. Let's dive in, shall we? There's still space for that to happen. We'll get into, kind of how we crossed paths and kind of a little bit more of your musical trajectory. But in doing my research last night, and you can talk about it at whatever length you want, but I found out some pretty interesting family roots in that your dad was an NFL player. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's a great starting point. So when he actually was born and raised in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
That's what I was saying. Okay.
Yeah. And that was something that he was naturally very good at, football. And
did I see that he played for U of M? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Cool.
So his trajectory was really interesting. He was a young star on the football field, and then in high school he was really big, and then he was getting recruited by all these schools. And every time I talk to him, every time we take a walk around the neighborhood, he usually gives me a little bit more information about his career. He gives me little bits and pieces like each time, because people ask me questions all the time. What team did he play for? When did he win this? And to be honest, I don't have all the answers. I'm still getting the answers myself.
Sure.
But I usually tell people that they can look up like a Wikipedia thing if they want more info. And I don't always have the amount of you can't always explain to everybody everything in like a 1-minute sentence.
Right.
So I just tell them the information I have. But long story short, yeah, man. And actually, I was very passionate in sports before music, man. Like,
okay,
having a father who took football that seriously really puts so many expectations on you as a young person.
Yeah.
Growing in a community, who values sports.
So we can also tie in that football thing to the music, because we'll get kind of into the origins of your musical studies in a little bit. But like, I have to imagine, having a parent who is 100% dedicated to the career that they're in, probably like dedication rubs off, I have to imagine, for whatever you're obsessed with, whether that's music or sports or whatever. Like, you probably grew up, I imagine, like very committed to the sport or the music because of just seeing, I mean, it takes discipline to be in the NFL,
Yeah, so that's also a good point. Well, really what it is, man, when you're young, a lot of things that you're doing are compulsory, right? You're not making many of your day-to-day life decisions. Your guardians are. So when I was younger, man, I wanted to just be playing sports with my friends, man. I didn't want to be practicing the piano, man. I didn't want to be inside the house and going to music lessons. Nah, man, I wanted to be hanging out with my friends, going to sleepovers. I wanted that normal life. But what you're saying is true. I had a natural inclination towards sports, and genetics they mean something, man. So yeah, man, when I was a kid, I was pretty good at football. I did really well in PAL.
Did you go to a big school?
Say what?
Did you go to a big school?
What period are we talking? We talking K through 12, or are we talking like?
Yeah, I would say K through 12. Or did you play? You didn't play any college ball, did you?
No.
Right.
But like I said, I grew up playing sports. Sports was my life as a child and teenager.
I just say for reference, the school that I went to, the football team, obviously you got to have 11 kids out there. I think our team, while I was playing, was no bigger than like 15. So if you were on the offense, you were also on the defense. So like, was that was it a pretty competitive atmosphere out there, like, or were you able to kind
Yeah,
of shine on your own?
yeah, that's a good question. So, the community I grew up in is your like typical East Coast suburban community. It's a bedroom community, a lot of families here.
Sure.
Um, it is quite competitive. The East Coast produces some of the best athletes in the country.
Yep.
Um, you look at all the recruiting pools for like a lot of the biggest sports like football and basketball. A large concentration of the top recruits come from this area,
Mm-hmm.
the tri-state area of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, um, also Connecticut. So it's very competitive for sports here, and that's actually um, well, once I kind of my parents kind of ended up making the decision for me that eventually that music was going to be what they wanted to invest their resources in, um, not so much athletics because my dad had already been down that road, and
Sure.
I think that he knowing him now, I'm 32 years old today. Knowing him now and having known him all these years, he's always been passionate about music too. So that kind of makes
Okay.
sense why he may have steered me in that direction.
So it from what I was able to gather, around 7 years old. Is that correct? When you started taking music lessons?
Six,
Now,
seven.
was this specifically piano, or was this just like let's see what he likes, or why piano specifically?
So I believe that they were able to bring home a upright piano that they won in some sort of
Oh, cool.
situation. Maybe it was a contest or raffle or something like that. And so they had the piano already, and I have an older sister. She's 10 years my senior, and she took piano lessons. So when I came around, they also got me piano lessons, and it was compulsory. It's just something they wanted to do with their children. They wanted their children to have piano. So I didn't have much of a choice. I would go to piano lessons, and they would usually be like an hour after school.
Hmm.
And I did that all throughout my childhood. And the thing, getting a chance to learn more about myself, um, I really like once things click, it's a very fast trajectory for me to reach the. It's like some people have a tunnel vision sort of thing, right? Where
Or
they're like,
hyperfixation,
say what? Yes,
like a hyperfixation.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 So some people refer to it as OCD, but that's not as that's not as putting a positive spin on it, but
Sure.
it can
Yeah.
be. It's a double edged sword, I'll tell you, because you get fixed on something and you really progress fast. You
Hmm.
progress quickly. Whatever it is, it could be a video game or it could be an instrument
Hmm.
or um, whatever. And so that has always helped me in different things. And that I think just by nature of my mind working that way, when they put me in piano lessons, I really latched onto it really fast.
Hmm.
Even if it's something I didn't really want to do, I was there for an hour after school for weeks and months and years. So it's like you're performing at recitals and you're getting a chance to do things in public and all those things.
Well, I think too, like, of course, when you're younger, obviously, this is the ADH deep dive. So I talk a lot about these ADHD impulses. I was diagnosed as the alphabet kid when I was younger. So it was like ADHD, ADD, OCD, ODD, all of these. So yeah, these hyperfixations or these obsessions, especially when it comes to something creative, I resonate with in a big way. And of course, when you're a kid, like you said, there's really only one goal, and that's just like I can't remember exactly how you worded it, but it's something like you find your thing,
Yeah.
right? And then a big part of our thing as kids is trying to either impress our parents or seek validation in some way. So it makes sense that the two passions that were kind of trickled down to you were the things that you gave your all to. So, but what happens with me, I don't know how it happened when you were younger, but what happens with me now is I have so many deep obsessions and so many things I'm incredibly passionate about that it's hard to allocate time or brain power or resources to figure out which one specifically I want. At what point in your life did these two passions, besides just your parents saying, well, we'd rather invest in the music side in you? Because you said that you kind of wanted to play football for a little while. At what point did those two roads meet and you kind of had to make a decision ultimately?
So, yeah, the the piano courses, at least with the teacher I had, eventually, if she thought that you were talented enough and you, or whatever the case, and you were sounding good, they would start to enter you in piano competitions.
Okay.
So there was one competition called the PTSA. It's called the Parent Teacher Society of America, and they would hold a competition every year. And then if you were a student that won, you got a chance to perform at Carnegie Hall. So
Cool.
they would do this every year, and it would be for young students. So like I'm pretty much K through 12. It was open for this. So she was a part of the PTSA, the organization of the teachers and stuff. So a lot of her students would end up entering these competitions. So she started putting me in these competitions around 9, and I did really well in them up front. I started off doing really well in them, and in the background, I'm also playing PAL football during all of this. So one of the competitions, I placed first, and I got a chance to perform at one of Carnegie Hall. So at Carnegie Hall,
Wow.
so WoW recital at WoW recital hall at Carnegie Hall, and that was at the age of 9. And there's a picture of it on my page, and that I think that I realized, like, when I was younger, that the that was a special moment, at least for me and my teacher and my parents, and it gave me the internal message that, okay, maybe this I'm going somewhere with this. Maybe I can, I was young. You're not thinking too
Right.
critically when you're young. You're just kind of
Sure.
just going day to day. But
You're seeking that validation wherever it comes.
yes, yeah.
Yep.
So I felt good during those moments when I was 9, and I knew that it was a good feeling, and so that's kind of when um they kind of collided, because it's like, okay, well, I'm playing football, I'm pretty good at that, and I'm also playing the piano now, I'm pretty good at that. So I kept doing that for a number of years, and it was kind of like just piano and sports, piano, basketball, piano, football.
So tell me where, because I don't know if you know this about me, and how would you? Because this is kind of, I think, our second time even talking face to face,
Yeah.
and we'll get into how we actually met later. But I actually worked at the Interlochen Arts Academy, where you ended up going. It's tuition based, of course, right? But you ended up going there, correct? Tell me how you ended up getting into Interlochen and what was that like for you?
Yeah, that's great. I was gonna bring that up too. Wow.
So I do my research, man.
Yeah, interlocking is a big part of my life. My parents started sending me to the summer camp first,
Yeah,
and that was
it's a
around
cool little trial run.
age 13. They started sending me out there. I would go out there for 4 weeks at a time, and then that is really when I was introduced to all these different people from these different cultures, and it really just expanded my worldview. I mean, I can't stress enough being put in those situations, because you're there for 4 to 8 weeks.
Yep.
And that's a long time when you're young to be away from your family and
Yep.
your friends too. You're away from your whole network, and you're just out there.
And for context about the academy itself, it's essentially Interlochen is this remote little place in northern Michigan, and the academy itself is essentially plopped in the middle of the woods.
Yes.
On this beautiful lake. It's a private arts academy, so it's filled with different types of classes for the creative arts, whether that's music or acting or filmmaking or writing. And then you can break those down into subcategories. So if it's, music, there's piano and guitar and the percussive arts. And because it has such interesting prestige, A, it's got a sweet stage, so a lot of cool musical acts come and perform. But B, there's also a lot of master classes there. So very talented artists from all across the globe will come out and teach a group of kids, things that they couldn't learn in a million years just from the prowess that Interlochen has. So it was a great place to work. I was a photo video intern for a year. So that was the year of 2015 or 2016, and you were 08, is that correct?
Yes, I graduated from the academy in 2008, and I attended the camp for about 7 or 8 summers.
Sweet.
Yeah, well, once, like you said, you asked you asked a really good question a few minutes ago about how the paths intertwined between like music, sports, and my childhood, and Interlochen was like the next step after starting those piano competitions. So the piano competitions at age 9, and then I started doing those every year. So if you won, you performed in a recital in Carnegie Hall in the springtime. They would have a few for all the young kids, and it'd be K through 12. So that was like age 9. And then once I got to age 13, 14, they started sending me to Interlochen. And then that was like, whoa, like there's people all over the world, like my age, and they're doing all these things, playing all these different instruments. There's all these like wonderful personality. And I'm like 13, and I'm in a cabin with people I don't know. And they're from all these different places. And I'm just kind of really just feeling my way through my teenage years, like in these different environments.
But it also gives you sort of a college experience in that you are away from everyone and everything you know. You are not just, of course, it takes a special kind of talented person to be there, but you are now in a melting pot of other equally talented, if not more talented, and that just elevates your own talent because you're surrounded by such talent. And there's hundreds of kids that go there. So yeah, really cool place to be. I can't imagine what kind of experience that must have been like as a student.
Absolutely. I mean, we had to get up at like 6:30 a.m. to flugelhorns and trumpets.
The flugelhorns. Yep.
Yeah. So like that was something, and having this daily schedule that you had to stick to and wearing a uniform. It was a beautiful experience. I created so many memories with the students there, and I still have some friends today. And, the time I was there, remember social media. I mean, Facebook came around in 2007.
So it was brand new, man.
What?
It was, I mean, the height of it was all brand new, like Facebook itself. Yeah.
Right. And so I was at Interlochen before all that. And so my point being, I was very present. I wasn't like
glued to
my device. None of us were like glued to our pages. Nothing saying, not making any negative connotations, but like it was a different time. Now a lot of things that we do are the landscape has changed so much. But so that was a different time for sure. Just being younger, I couldn't just flick a picture and send it home about what was going on and send a story to people. I was just there.
Were your parents able to come out and see any of the performances that happened?
Well, what ends up happening is the parents come and pick up the children at the end, and then that's when all the performances are. And
sure.
Into the season stuff.
Yeah, I didn't end up doing any of the camp stuff. I did calendar school year to the end of the calendar school year.
Yeah, I did.
My last day was graduation.
Yeah, I ended up doing both. So the camp is where I started, and that was great. And then usually what ends up happening, they'll recruit people from the camp to attend the academy. And,
so tell me about and you can bridge the gap as delicately as you'd like, but tell me how the college experience then started, because you ended up coming out to University of Michigan. So first question is, was that convenience of it was Michigan and you were starting like Michigan? Was it a good college? that you just were always striving for? So that's the first question. And then B, tell me again at what length you can about is it called the Gershwin initiative? Is that correct?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit
You have
about
a
those.
lot. Okay, great. Yeah. So uh, I attended Interlochen Academy for my senior year of high school, and I applied to a lot of different colleges, mostly conservatories and places geared toward music. And I was accepted to a number of schools, but I was offered a scholarship to attend Berklee College of Music in Boston, actually.
Oh wow.
So, so I went there for 1 year because I wanted to it was a new city, and I wanted to give it a shot and see what would happen. And
Sure.
I have but good things to say about my experience at Berklee. I will say that it was during a period of time in my life where, once again, I'm 18 years old in a new city,
Yeah.
and I don't know much, don't know many people, so it was definitely a little overwhelming for me at that age. However, I started off there, and I met all tons of people in Boston. My sister was living there at the time, so that was a factor in me choosing to go to school there.
Okay.
And however, with all those things being said, the school was great for me at the time, and I was young in this new city. It wasn't sustainable for a 4-year college career. Um, it wasn't for me at the time for just different personal reasons. The main one being that I was really young in this new city, and I grew up in this suburban town, so it was completely different
Yeah.
from what I'm used to.
Right.
So that was one of the main issues I had. And then eventually I dropped out after about a year and a half because it was more, like I said, due to personal reasons, not so
Sure.
much due to the school or anything like that.
Now, at this point, sorry to jump the gun, was there a fallback in place, or were you like, I think I just need to stop for a little bit. I need to stop school?
Yeah, man, I came to a point where I was really lacking direction. I remember I wasn't attending class regularly. I was wasting away the scholarship that I had received to attend there. So I said, well, if I'm not going to take advantage of the situation, I might
Yeah.
as well just drop out and figure something else out. And I was at that period in life where I just didn't know. I didn't know whether I wanted to finish school or even stay in school. Because we were hearing stories about all these successful dropouts during that time.
Especially in the arts.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was really glamorous to drop out, and I kind of played into that a little bit. I was like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to drop out, and maybe like some money will fall out of the sky or a record deal or something."
Yeah. Because that's how it happens. Yeah.
So so yeah, man, I enjoyed my time there, but I said, this isn't the right environment for me. I need like I need more like a more nurturing environment. Which then I started to think of all the universities I like and all the schools, because I said, well, maybe I'll feel more comfortable on a college campus because I'll have more resources at my disposal. I won't just be alone in this big
So,
universe.
pardon the ignorance here. When you're at Berklee, you're not on campus or anything. You're not living in a dorm or anything.
Well, the campus is in the city, so it's kind of like a quasi campus.
Okay.
It still feels like you're just in Boston. I mean, Berkeley's
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
but there's also 10 other schools
That makes
right
sense.
around the corner. That whole area is just oversaturated with schools and universities, and yes, they have their sections of the city, but it just doesn't feel that way. Like when you're in that city, it didn't feel that way
Sure.
to me. Versus being on a very contained campus with like university teams and like just
Yeah.
more things that are bringing people together versus being at a school where people are on their own professional paths.
Sure.
And like I said, at that age, 18, 19, I felt, I think we need a little, as human beings, we still are developing so much at that
Yeah.
age. And at that time, I was still unsure about my path, career choice. I mean, I know if you think if you go to a school like that, you probably already know what you're trying to do, but I didn't at the time. I was still kind of teetering.
Right. And I mean, arguably, you're still a kid. Even after you graduate college, like you have not fully experienced the harshness of life and reality. So, like, yeah, I can only imagine that feeling lost while you are headed in the direction you thought you were headed may be a little overwhelming of a feeling.
Yeah. So,
So, well, I was just how did the U of M transition then happen? Like, when did you land on that?
well, I had, that was one of the schools I had applied to initially, and I had been accepted before, but it was at the time I was comparing the scholarships and whatnot, and I just remember that the first time I was accepted, it just I don't know. I just wanted to give Berkeley a shot, but once I dropped out of Berkeley after a year and a half, and I said, I knew some of the instructors over at U of M, and I said, I was at home where I am now in New Jersey while I was after I dropped out, and I was here just thinking of what my next step was going to be. And then I decided maybe I'll enroll back in school, but this time I'm going to try an actual university with a campus and, have a completely different experience than I had at Berkeley. So the first thing that came to mind, one of the first schools that came to mind was University of Michigan because a few reasons. My mother is from Detroit. My dad is, he attended
Played for
U
the
of M.
team.
Yeah,
Yep.
he attended U of M on the team. And then, I had always just growing up, just a lot of family from Detroit. My mom's from there. So Michigan was a very it seemed like it was a good next step for me at that time to go to U of M with all the
Sure.
support that I had in that area, the family being there, and the college campus with all the students and just the resources to really so that I could really enjoy my college career. Michigan had everything: sports teams, everything that you could want for a school. That's what I felt at the time.
It's one of the most prestigious universities in the country. So, or not, maybe not prestigious, but you know, heavily revered.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no, it's just the same thing. Yeah, right.
yeah. So the music thing. So you're talking to someone who's not had never had the college experience. When you're going in there, obviously there's the general ed stuff. There's the prerequisites, but when you're starting to kind of focus your studies, what type of electives or things did you try to find to kind of sort out this creative thing you were figuring out still?
I've always been interested in philosophy and things of that nature. You might see me post a lot of quotes from different sources and
Yeah.
things that, and that draws into my nature of just like I'm a deep thinking individual. I could sit, I could just sit all day and think about different things and not really get bored because it just to me it's just there's so much to think about, and that's a good thing, and then also not good. Good so thing is overthinking can lead to a lot of issues, right? You can create
Correct.
problems that aren't there, but
Yep.
once it's a double-edged sword because overthinking you can create problems that aren't there, but also solutions that aren't there.
Yes.
So you kind of get the best of both worlds, which depending on who you are can make you either elated or depressed. I mean, it's one of those
Sure.
things. Like it just depends on how you function. So in my case, I try to I try to work with myself. The older I get, the more I try to make life. Um, I try to make things in life. Just I try to streamline things. Try to find what works for me and streamline things. Everybody has a different health routine,
Hmm.
or some people don't bother with it at all, or everybody has a different way of how they go about things. But for me, since I'm really a deep thinking individual, that's kind of I like to read a lot of philosophy. Um, I like the idea of helping others, but I really think it, and I think we all kind of understand this on some level. It starts with ourselves.
Yeah.
So, I over the years, I've really just been working on some of my weak points and trying to figure out, where I can do better. I mean, it sounds good on a podcast, but this is true. I mean, because every day, since I'm an overthinker, it's just like I'm creating all these issues and solutions like nonstop with different things. I'm kind of trying to manage them, figure out how all these things apply to me.
Well,
What
and
path?
you know, cliches are cliches for a reason too, right? Like how many times have you heard that you can't love others until you learn to love yourself, or you have to focus only on what you can control because everything else outside of your control is outside of your control, like of course it is the eternal pursuit of a human being to seek, whether this is the word enlightenment or just happiness as a concept, like until there is some self-discovery, whether that's through experimenting in different creative arts or different pursuits, or just focusing on literally the only things that you can control. That's sort of where the only path for growth to come.
Yes.
So you're in school. Obviously, you're wanting to pursue some sort of music, but you've got this philosophy background as well. Where do those things meet? Because obviously, I'm familiar with. I played in a jazz band through high school. We more changed it to experimental arts. That's what it was called. It was the experimental arts ensemble. So it was a curriculum jazz class, but our teacher just let us create kind of whatever we wanted, and we would work together to try and feel each other out. We got a lot better at improvising, working on solos, and kind of collaborating creatively. But a lot of that came through the first 10, 15 minutes of class was everybody sitting and talking down and like understanding where everyone's at on a personal level. So when you're in a school, how are you able to kind of collaborate with people who you're kind of in a bigger class at this point, correct? Because you're not really doing the solo thing yet.
Oh, this is when I enrolled at Michigan.
Yeah.
The solo thing, you're referring to the solo thing as like
well, I mean, like, so you're not a solo musician now. Maybe we can skip this gap and kind of get into where you're at now. Maybe that helps point it a little bit. Because right now, I think let's pick up on this. The only version of you that I know is the you who you are right now. Obviously, there's a whole history of who made this person sitting in front of me right now. But post high school, this person started to turn into the Gil who's sitting in front of me. That obviously leads to the Grand Hotel where you're at now, and maybe we can start getting into a more poignant conversation about that. But when did the pursuits leave you, and or maybe not the pursuits, and I'm sorry, this is a long-winded way of kind of pointing this at you, but you kind of seem like you're doing what you're ultimately going to be doing now, correct? Like,
sure, yeah, absolutely.
When did you land there? Not just the Grand, but becoming a performing artist.
Okay, yeah. So it's interesting you asked that question because I actually was gonna answer your previous question. I can do it in short.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, that's what I ramble, as you'll see.
No, it's fine. I'll answer both. So Ed Sareth was a professor at University of Michigan, and he one of the other reasons that attracted me to that school was he had built his own curriculum around meditation and jazz music, or meditation music in general.
Wow.
And it was a degree studies called Jazz and Contemplative Studies.
Okay, all right.
That was like so perfect for me.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening, I mean, while I was very passionate about philosophy and music, that didn't always translate to me wanting to write papers.
Sure.
And 50 papers a year. So I started off in jazz and contemplative, but then when I realized what I had needed to do to graduate and how many credits I needed, I kind of chickened out after about a year or two, and I just got a straight up music degree, and I went on about my business. But for a while, I was doing that degree, and I was learning contemplative studies, and I was taking his course, and it was really great for me during that period of my life to kind of have that going on. And we would get together. He would have big courses, and we would get together and we would meditate together and write about ideas, and it really fit into what I was aiming for. So as I'm getting older, I'm starting to grow into myself, as a person who really enjoys deep thinking, and also a person who really enjoys art.
Yeah.
And also as a person who really enjoys sports too. But by this time, sports are out of the picture. Um, so that's around the time I'm at U of M, and I'm in this. I got what I wanted. I wanted this nurturing college environment where I had resources at my disposal. I could go to sports games. I could go to like frat parties on the weekend or whatever it is I wanted to do. I wanted to have those options. And while I had those options in Boston at Berkeley, they weren't contained to
Yep.
one campus where when you're young I had to do too much in Boston. You wanted to go to a party, sometimes you had to find a way to get across the city.
Yeah.
It's just too much for 18, 19-year old for me. So, and as this is all going on, I'm growing into myself as a musician. I'm getting a lot of time each day to do some deep thinking, meditation and stuff. I'm studying with one of my teachers at U of M is um, a lady. Her name, she's now passed, but her name was Jerry Allen, and she was a very well known jazz pianist, um, internationally and domestically. And she's from Detroit as well. So as you can see, a lot of my Michigan roots are really starting to intersect.
Yeah.
My dad having gone to Michigan, my mom being from Detroit,
Hmm.
Interlochen.
Yep.
So Michigan, as you're starting to see in our conversation, although I was born and raised in New Jersey, I'm spending as much time in Michigan as I am in New Jersey because every summer I was going to Interlochen. My mom is Detroit. We were visiting family for her all the time. So Michigan and New Jersey, as far as I'm concerned, they're like I have my home state, which is New Jersey, and then my second home state, which is Michigan. And that's kind of how things have been throughout most of my life.
Now I've got my I'm born and raised Michigan, grew up Lake City, Cadillac area. Um, I've got my fair share of complaints about Michigan. I think that has more to do with just projection as like it has nothing to do with the state itself. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fine people of Michigan, but I had I had my fill of it. So I had sort of the exact opposite in that I lived in Michigan, born and raised, and then I was like, I need something different, and I went to New York City, and I lived in Brooklyn for a year. And I don't know if this is kind of what you felt in at Berkeley. Um, but yeah, it was like I had it in my palm. I had everything I wanted. It was like all the stuff I said I wanted to have. But I was not ready for it. It was all so spread out. I was so overwhelmed that I was like, I think I need, that nurturing feeling where it's like I'm getting, in theory, on paper, I'm doing exactly what I want. I'm in New York City as an aspiring actor or creator or filmmaker, but like I'm not doing it. I'm not like, I don't feel like it's helping me. And then ultimately, I find my way back into Grand Rapids, not into back into Grand Rapids. I now feel like Grand Rapids is the perfect middle ground between, because Lake City, my hometown, has less than 1,000 people. The next biggest city I went to was Cadillac, which had 10,000 people. Then it was New York City at 8.5 million people, and then Grand Rapids is like what, 1 million or something like that.
Yeah, those are huge differences.
Yeah, so I've split the difference a little bit. I feel for the first time like I'm where I'm supposed to be, like at least for now. So now you're out of college, right? Where, and if there's a few gaps in between, feel free to fill them in. But you've got this residency position at a place for, outside of Michigan, is called Mackinac Island at the Grand Hotel. How long between then and now do you get this? Like, what type of career performing do you have after college and this residency?
Oh, that's a great question. So, what ended up happening was, I tr- so we're after Boston and undergrad at U of M, and then I had like I had some other periods before I graduated U of M where I took some time off to figure some things out. I took another semester off because I was unsure once again, but I got through those things. I finished undergrad, and then I actually didn't have much going on for a period of time after undergrad was over. I came back to New Jersey from what I remember, and I was just kind of fumbling around, just like hanging out with friends. I didn't graduate with a gig or some fancy job or nothing. Finished college, came back home, and I was just chilling, hanging out with friends.
Were you
And then,
performing and booking shows?
yeah, here and there, but I was just music was always kind of just going on in the background. Somebody would call me for a gig, and this is a period of time when things weren't as consistent. There was no Grand Hotel, nothing. This is after undergrad, so
Sure.
um, I'm just kind of chilling. And then what ended up happening was there's a guitar center that's local, that's near where I grew up, and it was like, they had job openings, and I was like, man, there's instruments there,
Yeah.
you know, I can mess around with this for an undisclosed period of time. So I started working there in retail in the pro audio department, and I learned a bunch about instruments and all sorts of sound equipment and things. And I did
Okay.
pretty well in sales, and I did that for just a year. And then once again, I was at this point where I was like, what do I do next?
Yeah.
I'm at Guitar Center. That's not where I had planned to be, but it was like a good place to just it was a good place to just learn some more things
Now,
about it.
quick question. How old are you at this point when you're working at Guitar Center?
About like 20. I'm probably like let's see. This is in 2000. Yeah, I finished undergrad in 2013, and then I worked at Guitar Center like a year after that. So I'm probably about like I think I'm around like 2021,
Okay.
22.
Yeah. You said you're 32 now?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I was just trying to piece it all together.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so I jumped the gun a little bit. I was thinking with the grand. Yeah, that's quite a bit later.
The Grand comes in 2018. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. So there's a few things that happened before that,
Yeah.
and I'll be brief.
No, as
So
ad nauseum, please.
yeah. So yeah, I'm doing that. I'm doing the Guitar Center thing, and that's not what I wanted to do long term. But once again, like I said, it was something to do,
Mm-hmm.
and it was local, and I didn't have to travel far. It was perfect, and so I'm doing that. And then I said, what's next? Guitar Center is over, you know, and I decided that it was time for grad school.
Okay.
And so, excuse me, grad school. Yeah, I was flipping things around.
Go ahead.
So after undergrad, I had a period of time where I didn't do much. Then during that time before Guitar Center is when I said, okay, there was another famous pianist. His name is Benny Green, and I heard that University of Michigan, the same school I went to undergrad, I heard that they were hiring him on faculty. And at the time, I had the option to go to grad school and go back to school. And once again, I didn't know much about what was going on or what I was doing. This is like 2013. And so after about a year out of school, I decided to re-enroll.
Interesting.
And this is about 2015, 2016, and excuse me, I got things mixed up. It's before Guitar Center.
Okay.
And so I decided to re-enroll in grad school. I had my sights set on New York City, and I wanted to attend Juilliard. That didn't end up. Say what?
That's huge.
Yeah, that's what I initially wanted to do, but that didn't end up panning out. So I ended up going back to U of M for grad school, and then that's when, at that same time, I decided to go to grad school. The Gershwins, the Gershwin family, they were also in talks with the university about donating one of George Gershwin's pianos.
Okay.
And the Gershwins, they have a nephew that attended the business school at University of Michigan. So they had their interests set on donating the piano to the University of Michigan. George Gershwin has a famous piece which you may have heard in commercials called "Rhapsody in Blue."
Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay. I guess I would have never been able to identify the composer, but interesting.
Yeah. George Gershwin wrote Rhapsody in Blue. So Rhapsody in Blue is a very well-known piano piece with
Hmm.
orchestra, and it's famous because for for a variety of reasons, but the main reason why it's a huge deal, the piece, is because when George wrote Rhapsody in Blue, I can send you info on it later, but it was at the time it was like intersecting classical music with jazz.
Yeah, I was going to say we played it in our experimental arts class as a jazz piece that we all tried to put our own flair on. So,
Okay, so
yeah, but
now you can see why I, being myself, was so attracted to that
yeah.
piece early on.
Yeah.
So it was brought to the attention of some of the people who were dealing with the Gershwins that I could play Rhapsody in Blue, and I had some experience with it, and so the Gershwins were donating this piano, and then they decided, of course, they needed to have a big celebration around the piano, and I sent you like a clip
Mm-hmm.
actually with an
Yep.
orchestra, and that was from the concert actually. The
That exact one. Okay.
Gershwin, so that was actually at the time that was the biggest concert I had performed in my life because there were like 4,000 plus people in attendance,
Cool.
and like I said, in my early 20s, and that was the most people I had ever performed in front of. So all those opportunities started to come about in grad school when the Gershwins got involved, and at that point in my career, I'm a lot more focused. I'm older. I'm in grad school. I'm doing this jazz piano thing. I had studied with some teachers. I had some opportunities, and I didn't really even mention the big, really turning point for me in my career happened in 2014, right before grad school, when I got invited to perform at the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland.
Oh,
So,
wow.
because I in the back, all right. So you talked to me as a solo artist, which that is partly true because piano you can kind of play as a solo artist.
Sure.
Um,
It's
and the cool
typically
thing about
accompanying.
Yeah, now what's cool about the arts, which you probably understand, there's just so many grants and
Yeah.
competitions available to all of us.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what industry you're in, video, music, you can find a grant,
Yep.
like they're out there. Whether you'll get chosen for them is another story, but they're out there.
Yep.
So one thing that I always consistently did, I was always sending out things to organizations, competitions, grants. I would just send stuff. I didn't care whether they didn't choose me. They didn't choose me or not. I don't know. Like I think just from being from such a young age, I've been thrown in front of large audiences. I remember when I was younger, of course, it made me really nervous. But the more I was thrown into these situations, I think it really gave me thick skin to deal with rejection and to deal with things not going so well. Because I say that to say that I would send out all these different CDs, and I would send out my portfolio all over the world because I would just go online and type in jazz piano competition, and like all these things would come up. So I started doing that, and lo and behold, in 2014, I heard back from Switzerland. I was like, "Whoa!" Like,
Insane.
yeah, and I have to say that my dad, you spoke to him about like his NFL career and stuff like that. Once he decided, once he saw in me that I had some talent in music, he was like all in.
Good.
So even though I may have had a lot of periods of inactivity, no gigs and whatnot, in the background, my dad is taking me to the studio, and I'm recording with local musicians, some of my mentors. I'm entering competitions. Like this is always going on. Like even when I'm working at Guitar Center, all those things we discussed already in the background, I might have sent like a CD to like Florida or
Hmm.
something because they had a festival coming up. And if I sent out like 10 applications, I might hear back from two of them, and that was actually good in a way because the two ones you hear back from could be big, like I heard back from Switzerland, and then subsequently I did all these other ones. So that was a big thing for me during the competitions. sending out my music and my portfolio to people and seeing how people will respond to it. And so even before I started to get professional opportunities, I would get opportunities through these competitions and grants and things like that.
So you have, it was interesting that maybe it's a burying of the lead here, that like off the top, you had talked about not really having any necessary sense of direction. Like you didn't really know what it was that you wanted. And maybe this is just my ignorance or my early perception, but I thought that that was going to be like, I had the talent, but I didn't really perform. I didn't really utilize it. I just kind of I noodled around in my room. And I say that because that is maybe the more common story, where like somebody finds a passion, they don't really know what to do with it. They get a small glimpse of what it's like to find success in that, and then they're chasing that forever. Whereas it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you had such a saturated youth of performing that you had sort of had that. You're like, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to perform. It may or may not be my thing. I just don't know yet.
Yeah, in many ways, what you're saying is true. All throughout my young life and into my teenage years and up until now, I've been immersed in the arts. I've had opportunities to perform internationally in many different countries, just even before some of the like the Grand Hotel and those things came around. So in some ways, you're right. Of course, I always knew that there was more to see and more to do
Mm-hmm.
than what I had done. Um, and you know, People have always been asking me about when I'm going to release my first album, which I haven't done yet. I'm still waiting to do that.
You say that. I checked out Chronicles Part 3, man. It's pretty solid, dude.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's funny. We could go so many different directions, but yes, I do have original compositions,
Yeah,
and
you do.
it's all the music services that we have are great, Spotify and all that stuff. But I just wanted something public, and
Yep.
so it didn't really matter so much to me the service because I know if you're not getting a million streams, you're not going to get much in royalties. And I'm
Can
just not.
confirm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one of those. It's one of those routes. When I talk to people, it's like you got to be all in if you're going after the streams and the numbers
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to royalty payments, specifically for royalty music payments.
Yeah.
I there it there you just have to really approach it strategically because understanding the math,
Yeah.
you
Especially if you're going through a third party like a distributor where they're
you
taking a cut, then
yeah,
Spotify's taking a cut, then Apple Podcast is taking their cut. And
yeah.
it's like,
That's why we're forced to be so creative with the ways that we earn a
yep.
living.
Yep.
That's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your question about
For sure.
you know
Well, okay, so unless am I cutting you off here?
no.
So, before, I think this is probably the last gap before the Grand Hotel thing, because that'll kind of catch us up to where we are now. A really common theme on this podcast, maybe it's just because I'm talking to creatives and artists, but is imposter syndrome. Are you familiar with the term? Are you familiar with the
Yes,
concept?
absolutely.
Do you feel it?
I have felt more or less imposter syndrome at different points in my life. However, I think the what we talked about in the beginning of this podcast, how I have this tunnel vision. It's like I'm gonna see whatever I'm doing. I'm gonna see it through. I'm gonna due to the nature of how my mind works and how I like to overthink and I like philosophy. I'm gonna consider all angles in everything I'm doing. Usually that helps me bring something. Can you repeat your question?
Well, just imposter syndrome as a concept. Do you feel it? Do you like? Is that something you experience? Because it seems like you're a very confident performer, a very confident artist. And that's
Yes.
what a lot of people lack. Me especially. I feel imposter syndrome a lot in my life. I don't know if that has
Right.
to do with confidence, but yeah. Does that show up for you, or have you moved
Yeah.
past that in your life?
It shows up for me just just like it shows up for everyone else, definitely, and it's definitely been worse at different points in my life. I could just give you examples. I mean, even when I first started at the Grand Hotel, that there's a little bit of imposter syndrome I felt there. In every environment, I think, as you're progressing in your life, for me, at least, it's been true for me that I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome before you get used to that next level, and you kind of, there's always that tension before you hit that next
Yeah.
before the next point, and I think that the imposter syndrome is something that comes along with your gradual progression and whatever it is that you're doing, and the way that has helped me deal with it. I don't want to use cliches like "be the best you can be," although they're always going to ring true.
That's why they're cliches, man.
But that's exactly kind of the best way to the easiest, most concise way to approach the way I go about it. Because, like you said, like I said earlier, I'm an overthinker, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking always about all scenarios, whether good or bad, and essentially, I kind of do a cost benefit analysis with when it comes to like everything. I don't sit down with a pen and paper, but in my head, like a quick like, is this worth my time?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this like, why am I going to be doing this? And the main thing I go with is my gut, man. Like we could talk theories and we can talk this, that at the end of the day, but what is my gut telling me to do?
Yeah.
Does my gut say yes or does my gut say no? And I always go with my gut because I think that when opportunities come about, I truly believe that it's better to have, even if whatever you choose to do ends up being a disappointment, it's better to have gone through with it and be disappointed than to not ever know what would have happened if I did this.
Yeah.
If I had spoken to this person, if I had answered the phone on this day, if I had chosen this path instead of that path, that is what will cause me to go into a spiral because I'm an overthinker.
Yeah.
So I have to like, once I commit to something, I'm on this path, and whatever is going to help me achieve what I'm trying to achieve, that's what I'm going to do. And having that, it's kind of like tunnel vision in a way, but it's a tunnel vision that helps you achieve your goals. Because tunnel vision can also hurt you because you're not kind of like considering everything else.
Yeah.
But that's really helped me with the imposter syndrome because it rubs off on people and when you're in environments, and because I'm not necessarily an aggressive individual, but when it comes to like um myself and my art and things of that nature, I guess you can say I approach it aggressive, very passionately. Passionate is a better word. And I haven't always been very passionate about what I'm doing either, but life has kind of forced me to
Mm-hmm.
because things happen in your life, right? As you get older, you start to deal with deeper issues and deeper things going on in our lives, and eventually you start to seek some sort of outlet, right? And I'm 32, and having at this age, I've had some life experiences. I've had heartbreaks, I've had losses, and all those things. And we all need some sort of outlet. And what's my outlet? Art.
Yeah.
I'll sit at an instrument and I'll create, and that doesn't shield me from feeling deeply or anything, but at least it's some sort of it's I can place my energy there instead of just here and just letting it sit inside me. I can go and sit at an instrument and release all of it into this art and create something beautiful. That's kind of how I see it. It's like osmosis, even though I don't even know what
Yeah.
osmosis is, but I know it's like, it's some sort of changing of energy.
Well, and one of the things that I'm learning, whether it's as I get older or as I do this podcast more, is I used to believe that the difference between an unhealthy brain and an unhealthy brain was the existence of imposter syndrome. So, one day I will cure myself of the imposter syndrome. And what I'm learning is that's not really how it works. You will always feel like an imposter in a new thing. The difference between the unhealthy and the healthy brain is you can either use that imposter syndrome where you're surrounded by people better than you or who know more than you and use that as a method to fuel yourself to be better than so you can fit in and so you can feel accepted and welcomed, or you can embrace it with shame and believe it and say, I am all these things that I think about myself. I am all of these feelings. I am garbage. I am an imposter. I'm not talented. And therefore, I should just stop and I should give up and I should say no to these opportunities, because what's worse than feeling shame, right? So yeah, I guess you're just proving what I'm learning is that, like, yeah, we're going to be terrified by these experiences, but they really can shape and mold us into either a better or worse person depending on how we approach them.
Yes.
So let's bring it full circle. Okay. One lowly day. Actually, no. Okay, let's talk about you getting the job at the Grand Hotel first, and then we'll talk about how I met you there. So how did you hear about the job? How did you get the gig? And how long have you been there overall?
Well, so keep in mind that, Michigan is my second home state at this point. I had gone to Interlochen. I had
Yes.
attended U of M for undergrad and grad school. And so I knew about the Grand Hotel. I knew about Mackinac Island. I knew about them when I was younger because Interlochen is not far.
Sure.
And
Had you been?
yes, we've because my parents used to come pick me up from Interlochen. So quite naturally, what do you do on a weekend when you come pick up your kids? They say, "Oh, go to Mackinac Island. It's like a couple hours."
Well,
This way.
and sorry to interrupt. There may actually be some out-of-state people who have no idea what the Mackinac Island is. There's the two peninsulas in Michigan. There's the lower, where everybody talks about their hand and they point to you there. And then there's the upper peninsula, which is just another hand sideways. And so if you're from Michigan, you point your hand and that's how you tell people where you're from. There is a bridge that connects these two peninsulas. I don't know how long is it. What, 2 miles, something like that? It's a long.
Yeah, something
It's
like
not.
that.
It's not ridiculously long, but it's not the biggest bridge in the world.
Right.
Just connects the two peninsulas, and off to the side of this bridge is this tiny little, and it's relevant to the lore of the island, but it is turtle-shaped island. And yeah, that's Mackinac Island. It's historic in nature. This isn't a history lesson on Mackinac Island or the Grand Hotel, but the hotel is the primary tourist attraction residency of the island, and it's got some history, like presidents go there and performing artists go there, and it's a cool touristy experience. Sorry, had to supply the context. Go on.
Sure. So yeah, in 2018, let me first say that before I decided to take the opportunity to play the piano at the Grand Hotel, I had heard from the music director there before, between 2016 and 2018, and there were opportunities for me to go up there for short periods of time. But in 2018, fast forward, I had already did the whole Guitar Center thing we talked about before, and after that was over, I had finished, and then I received another message saying that there was a contract open for a pianist at the Grand Hotel for 4 months. And during this period of time, I'm unemployed. I'm kind of just, in my hometown, once again, just hanging out with my friends, just not much direction. Maybe playing a gig here and there, doing a piano competition here and there. Maybe if I got lucky, I would go to this. Somebody would call me back for something that I sent out. I was kind of just like, freelance. Like, really, I didn't have much going on. And then so I said, well, I might as well go to Mackinac Island. Like, I'm not doing anything else, like, sure, I'll go to the Grand Hotel for 4 months, I received, and it is a big opportunity, but in context, they're really just looking to fulfill a spot at that time for a musician. It's not so much about like what Gil brings to the table. Then it's really just about getting another musician there. Cause at the time they didn't really know too much about me. They just were looking for another pianist.
And it's essentially, this is actually, you can probably better explain what the position is itself. You have performances, but there's a lot of music as you're just wandering through the hotel.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of cocktail hour music, if you will, or lunch music. There's music at every point, pretty much. That throughout the day, and you could be doing anything from a small function to a big function, or performing with Disney characters, and and other things of
Yeah.
that nature. So um it's kind of perfect for a person like me if you think about it. But before like rewinding just a little bit, I received a message that they needed a musician spot filled. I wasn't doing anything, so I said sure. I was just like, let me go see what this is about. Like
Mhm.
4 months, sure, like whatever. This is 2018. I showed up there, um, and I spent 4 months there in 2018, and it was a pretty easy. The first year, like I said, I had been there before as a child. I knew about the landscape and all that, and I had been to the Grand Hotel, but this is my first time as an employee, and it was similar to our a lot of our first times anywhere. I was just getting used to everything, and once again, the business was a little different because it was still family owned at that time. Remember, now
Oh,
we're
right. I forgot it's now corporate owned.
yeah, it's no longer family owned. So when I joined, it was still in its original form with
Hmm.
the Muster family, and it was cool. I got a chance to play on this beautiful property and be
Stunning.
around all these lovely people, um, staff and guests. I mean, you meet
Hmm.
all different types of people like anywhere
Yeah.
else throughout the
Yep.
day. I mean, most people we're on a podcast. The great majority of people, human beings, I would say, are lovely people. We
Yes.
all have different
Yes.
personalities. Leave it there.
There's a percentage though of those who are not.
Yes, there is a
Yeah.
percentage, and we all know where that
Yeah.
goes. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I was up there, and I liked the social aspect of it. There were other musicians there. I didn't know them too well, but I got to know them because we're spending 7 days a week together.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I was actually going to ask, are you pulling sheet music? Are you composing your own stuff? How are you performing?
it's a mix of everything.
Okay.
Dep- Depending on the event, like I'll give you an example. We have like somewhere in time weekend, which is like the one of the biggest weekends there. It
Hmm.
kind of intersects. There's also in the past there's been a Titanic weekend, and I just say that to illustrate that when we do have those types of weekend, we play music straight from the period. We play period
Yep.
music, so we'll play music that was heard on the Titanic. There have been musicians
So
and
cool.
there have been musicians that have gone and transcribed the actual songs that people were playing during that period of time, and
So
so we
cool.
do those sorts of things straight down to the T. So, and it also gets very involved with, of course, all the weddings too in the summertime. So
Oh,
there's
right.
all these different parts of the business, and just it was huge for me to feel that my services were needed for these things every single day. And this was the Grand Hotel in 2018 was the first gig that I had where I was like, wow, like I can do this consistently as if it was any other job I had where I show up and consistently every day I have tasks to complete and stuff. I was like, this is like the closest I've gotten to feeling like this was a career.
Does it feel like it is more work, or do you feel like you're an artist all the time?
That's a great question. I would say I would say that at the Grand Hotel, you definitely get a good taste of both, but I would say that it's definitely a lot of work involved.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that um, there's a few different things that different situations. Whatever somebody's idea is for their wedding, well, the Grand Hotel is a big extravagant place, so people want
Yep.
to have big extravagant weddings.
Yep.
And if there was some song that they liked when they were a kid from some movie that they haven't seen and they don't know where to find it, they still want that song at their wedding, and that'll show up on a little sheet that I get. And it could be anything from the Beatles. Uh it could be any artist you could think of. A lot of times for weddings, you end up having the people who are getting married, they'll choose songs from a lot of their favorite movies.
Yeah.
So a lot of those assignments can be very challenging for somebody. I have the musical training, but you know, it. I've trained mostly in classical and jazz music, but as I've gotten older and as a gigging musician, I've had to really expand the genres um, that I play. In
Hey, Gil, you're oh, there you go. You were glitching out again for a hot second. I was going to fix it, but you're good now.
Yeah,
You're
no
back.
problem. So yeah, so the Grand Hotel, all those things happen on a day to day basis. You know, you could be just playing in the lobby. You're playing with the band at night while people are dancing. You're playing for people's weddings, which are really important. Um, you know, we have festivals throughout the summer. We have events like where you and your colleagues came and those sorts of things. So you that was the first time where I was like, I really felt like my life was what I was seeking, was what I was living, what I thought that my career would look like. I felt at that point in 2018, that was the closest I was to whatever I thought I wanted. You know, I didn't, even though I was
Sure.
kind of still just kind of whatever. I was like, wow, I can do this every day for X amount of time. This is cool. You know.
Mm-hmm. So, um, not to make every single person's life story have to involve the pandemic in some way, but I imagine that was huge on your career, at least for a short while, right? What was the pandemic like as far as a performing artist goes?
That's a great question. You know, this is one of the first times I'm speaking publicly about my experience as an artist during the pandemic. The Grand Hotel was open for 4 months.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We we usually open in May, and then we close in at the end of October.
All
So
right, so it would have been a summer thing. Yeah.
I remember all these events. So it was the second week in March where things were shutting down. March of
Mm-hmm.
2020, things are starting to shut down. I had I had my summer lined up with Grand Hotel stuff. I had different groups I was going to perform with because I'm sure you might remember there's bands at the Grand Hotel too.
Yeah.
There's a dining room band,
Yep.
and then there's also a terrace room band.
Yep.
So um, we get those bands together in advance. Usually after the holiday season, like right in January, this upcoming January and February, we'll start talking about our plans for the Grand Hotel
Okay.
next 2023. So I had my plans set out. I had the musicians I was going to be working with in 2020, and the Grand Hotel was going to open in May. But we're March 2020 is when the world is starting to realize that we're dealing with a serious situation,
Mm-hmm.
and that the next few months are going to look different for everyone. So I, like everybody else, was kind of stuck in a limbo because I'm like, well, if the Grand Hotel opens, great, because I'll be able to go out and play. But if they don't, I won't have any gigs.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I didn't really have much going on for a period of time, but March, April. So April, I'm talking to people. I'm starting to cancel things. Things are getting canceled. And remember, I'm still talking with the Grand Hotel, and they're like, you know, we still plan on opening. So the opening day is the first week of May in 2020. The closer it gets to opening day, finally people start coming into their senses and they realize that it's not going to open. It's not going to open in May. You know, we don't know. We just don't know. So everybody, once we got to May, we didn't open. So I'm in the same boat as everybody. Um, During that time, just not much going on because like I said, I live for 30 minutes outside of New York City. That's where I am currently. And so I'm talking with people, and then lo and behold, you know, the hotel announces that they're going to still go ahead and open.
Hmm.
And during the pandemic, and you know, we had our gig for 4 months. We went out there. So I lost out on about a month and a half to 2 months of work because usually we go out there from May to October, but we ended up opening, I think, in mid June instead.
Okay.
And so, fortunately for me, I was very lucky. I was able to work from June through October of that year in 2020.
Great. I mean, that is not the story for everyone as far as performance goes. So that's huge, man. I'm glad that you were able to do that.
But it was only because since I've been there for 5 years now at the hotel. The history of the hotel, they've stayed open during wars.
Yep.
They stayed open during other global pandemics. Um, that might have to be verified, but
Well, I
they
mean, during all the at least the wars,
yeah
I believe it. Yeah.
yeah all that stuff you learn about because they have that historian you may or may not have heard, Bob Taggett. You may or may not have
Yeah.
come across.
Yep.
Um,
The history behind the island and the Grand is huge to Michiganders.
right. So fortunately for the musicians who were employed by the Grand Hotel, we were very fortunate during the pandemic. Very fortunate. We were able to work for our normal 7 days a week thing
Mm-hmm.
from June through the end of October. We had to wear masks all the time. It was a little uncomfortable at times, but most of us were really grateful, and I knew how lucky I was during that time and fortunate, and I was just really thankful that I had
Sure.
something to do. I was still able to work as an artist because of the Grand Hotel's rich history and Mackinac Island, and they being the unique property that the Grand Hotel is, they had I believe I can't speak on behalf of the company, but I can say that I felt that we as island employees in general felt an obligation to our guests. Um, we felt an obligation to all the people that visit the island, and we wanted to open. Like uh, I know I wanted to go there and work. I can't speak for everybody else at the company, but I'm sure that the great majority of people, I would think that would be happy that they were able to work during a time where everything was shut down.
And I think especially that sentiment is palatable to this audience, which happens to be pretty saturated with artists and creatives. Like at the beginning, yeah, I'm sure it was nice to have that little break or whatever, but towards the summer of that first year, it was like, I just need to make art. I need to get back to doing what I love. And if that's in our position as artists or creators, like I can't not do that. I feel like you felt this obligation to, the guests, but maybe me specifically, or I'm sure others, like I felt this obligation to myself to be like, I've put so much work into becoming this person or honing my skills, like, and to just be sitting on them, it felt like a disservice to the art itself. Not that I wasn't petrified the entire pandemic. Trust me. Like I was horrified. I did not like the idea of socializing with people. But as soon as cause I didn't start freelancing as a cinematographer or photographer creator until like it didn't become full time for me until the pandemic, because necessity breeds what's the phrase? Creativity, ingenuity, whatever. Like,
Yeah, no, I
you
see
know,
what you're getting at.
yeah, where there is a need, we will fill it.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess to put a little cherry on top of the Grand Hotel, you and I met through the superhero and princesses weekend. The company that I work for is multifaceted. They do murder mystery parties. They do lots of immersive experiences. One of those being, superheroes and princesses. They have pretty legit costumes that are, I would say, Disney Studios quality of your biggest names. Your Elsas, your Spider-Mans, your Batmans, all your Bells and your Rapunzels. Those, and I remember seeing you perform, but I don't remember having an interaction with you until we bumped into each other at the bar.
Yeah. That was
Because it was so cool, man. Because we were upstairs, we were all sitting down having our little. Was it our last night? I can't remember.
it was
It was either
I think it was either your next to last or your last night.
yeah, I think the next morning was where we like hand out the certifications to all the kids and like tell them congratulations, you did it and all that. Um, yeah, we're all going up to have our one last hurrah at the bar. And the band that was playing that day comes in and sits down, obviously you and your colleagues. But I had seen you performing during, it was like, there's a spot in the weekend where one of the princesses gets up on stage and then, or multiple princesses get up on stage and then are singing to the kids, and they have the band accompanying them.
Yes.
And so your band was accompanying the princesses. I guess you've kind of talked about that a little bit, but like, what kind of preparation goes into that, first of all, when you're like preparing for a performance in front of like kids with princesses and people from that aren't part of your group? What's that like?
Yeah. So, in general, what we've always done for that event is we would receive the music requests from you all ahead of time, and
Sure.
and we would take a look at what songs the presumably the princesses wanted to sing, and
Yep.
then we would meet. We would meet for about we would meet for a small we would allot a small block of time before your show, usually generally about an hour, and
Yep.
we would go over the scenes and spend some time with a lot of the characters from your company, which is always such a fun thing for us to
It's
because
cool.
a lot of the events aren't like that particular event. They're just different, and
Yep.
they're just geared towards an older demographic. So they're not as like we've with you all, like you all are our peers. You know what I mean? We're all like,
Yeah.
you know,
We're all artists.
yeah, yeah. It really
Yep.
feels like we're all really just coming together to create something versus us just being off in the corner while this
Mm-hmm.
function continues. So I'll first say that. Um, and then just having some knowledge of the a little bit about the about Disney and all the other I know Disney's the big one, but it's would you say there's other companies that similar? I mean, Disney's like so huge, but like you all deal with
Oh, it's are you saying like the company that I work for?
well, that particular situation where we met, you were with the murder mystery group.
Yeah, that's a big, are you, I guess, are you asking if that's like a big event for the company? Because my understanding is that it's one of the bigger ones.
Oh no, sure. No, I was saying is Disney's. Would you say Disney is like the main theme for your all stuff, or like?
Oh, well, it's totally different. So, um, I'm kind of new to the company itself. So that gig was only my second gig with the company entirely. So I believe the company itself is the American Immersion Theater, which has troops all over the country. So a lot of people that came to the Grand Hotel were actors from different troops. We had Chicago troops. There's an LA troupe. There's the Grand Rapids troupe. The home base is Grand Rapids. And then under the American Immersion Theater Company, there's the Murder Mystery Party Company and the Princess Party Company. So they're sort of separate entities under the same
All right, that makes
ownership. So this was I was Spider-Man that week, but other events for the same company, I've been part of a murder mystery party. So I'm a subject or a suspect in a murder mystery thing, or a host or a detective or something like that. It's all just acting done under the guise or the umbrella of one bigger company.
great, great. So yes, so with all those things in mind, what generally happens is we do receive mostly requests from Disney movies that the company ends up performing for the kids. It's
Yeah,
usually a
yeah.
Disney theme where we perform. It's usually
Yeah, I see what you're asking. The princesses thing, yeah, that's all Disney
yeah,
and
it's usually
the
in
big names. Yeah.
that sort of thing. But while you all have all those other arms with the company, and then you come back also for the murder mystery
For
later
the
on.
murder mystery. Yep. Yep.
Uh, so those two events, yeah, I'm usually a part of those two events, and it's very similar to how we prepare for our own shows. It's not much different from getting together with the people who are going to be a part of the presentation, going over what roles everyone's going to play. In this particular situation, we have your colleagues who are the actors and actresses, and they're singing and doing all sorts of things, acting, dance, whatever's
Yep.
required. And then our music in this situation is definitely more less at the forefront, whereas we're supporting you all. So um, we're still kind of creating and doing what we're doing, but it's more in service to what's going on stage. So there
Sure.
involves like a little bit of an extra step, which is cool.
Do you get to like, is there a little bit of like friendly competitiveness amongst the musicians there where like, you know, like if an event like this is coming to the island, you're like, oh, I want to do that gig. Like, is that
I'll tell you what there is. There are musicians who like to read music, and there are musicians who don't like to read music.
I see.
So when it comes to this particular event, it usually goes to me because of my training and that I can read
Sure.
music really well. And for that event, it requires a lot of musicians to learn new pieces. So there are actually people who don't want to be a part of something because they don't want to have to do these things, or
That makes sense.
it'll go toward the event will be geared towards somebody who um, would be a best fit for it. And usually that's why I end up showing up to events like where you all and your colleagues are a part of, because of my training. As I spoke to you about from age 9, I read music and I do a lot of these basic functions really well.
Sure.
Um, you come across that doesn't necessarily mean that an artist who doesn't read music is better or worse. It's just a strength that I've developed, because there are artists who may not read music as well as me, but that I'm blown away by other things that they can do.
Yeah. It's a different skill set.
Right, and that so reading music is something that is a pretty strong skill set for me because of just all the different environments that we spoke about I've been in over the years. I was at Interlochen every summer when I was a kid. I was just reading so much music every day. I didn't know what to do with it. So um, that's why the Grand Hotel is such a great fit for a person like myself. Now that you've gotten to know a little bit more about what
Hmm.
I've shared, and um, because I can just all throughout my day, I can have all these different types of experiences. I might be with some characters from a movie, or I might just be in the parlor, people having tea and cookies, or I could be in the terrace room, people, you know, losing it to Bruno Mars or something, or
Yeah.
like, or Aretha Franklin, all those people. So like all that is like
Or
just
getting drunk song requests from parents of a bride at a
yeah,
wedding. Yeah.
exactly. It could be anything, and that's what really makes that gig exciting for me. We all seek different things in our line of work. Some of us seek money; it's totally fine. Some of us, I can't speak for everybody, but we all seek different things.
Hmm.
And money is always a part. At least for me, it's always a part of the equation for me. But I always like weigh what where it is, like there's money, there's satisfaction, there's
Yeah.
all these things that I think about when it comes to a job. And I will say that the Grand Hotel is definitely high in the satisfaction area. It's like it's just it's very satisfying to have a lot of these experiences. Now, I will say this: not every musician is there for as long as I am. 6 months is quite a bit of time. It's half
Yeah.
of your year.
Yep.
So right off the bat, every musician who you see there is on a different contract.
Well,
Some
and
people,
again, I don't know if I said this while setting up what the island is. You have to take a ferry over to the island. It's not
yeah,
like you can just hop in your car and leave. There's no cars on the island other than emergency vehicles. So like you can't just decide I don't want to do this anymore and just drive away.
right, and
You
the
know?
ferries aren't 24 hours either. So
Right.
um, it's a commitment, like anything else. But I think I've always felt this way, and I usually pursue opportunities until I feel a natural inclination towards something else.
Yeah.
And my gut, like which I spoke about before, has been telling me to continue to come to Mackinac Island every year and continue
Great.
to immerse myself in art, because the opportunity is there. It's there 7 nights a week for 6 months, which I think is just a huge blessing. And tying that into you mentioning the pandemic, we were still able to continue creating art during that time. And the huge the difference factor in this latest pandemic, one of them is we had social media at our disposal. So
Yeah.
while I'm gigging and doing this, I'm able to share it with the world.
Yeah.
And I had the rare opportunity that I knew most people who weren't performing or whatever, or had the idea that since there was a pandemic, that most people were inactive and they would have the um, they'd be able to tune in to what I was doing. So it was
Hmm.
almost like, although it wasn't a blessing for all of us, while I was able to continue creating my art and share it with everybody, at the same time, that was a huge blessing for me because we had everybody's attention. We had the world's attention
Right.
for a period of time. And a lot of us channeled that in different ways. Some people, they switched their business model to virtual and
Hmm.
they still continue doing what they're doing today because it just works so well with them.
Well, and you said that you actually know John Paul.
Yes.
He did a lot of, I mean, the pandemic, again, this necessity, um, it forced him to get creative and start playing online, doing, Facebook Live performances, and, artists, again, as much as we were set back and a lot of us were hurt and are still hurting from what the pandemic did to us, whether it was physically or our psyche. But I think a lot of us learned that there are other ways. I mean, think of how many people are. I mean, let's go to the most extreme. I don't know if you're a big fan of the comedy world, but a lot of people were posting their specials on Netflix and HBO and all this stuff. And then the pandemic comes around and everything just goes public. It's on YouTube. Or you put your music out on like SoundCloud, or people make their stuff accessible to a wider audience for free, because the most important part about what we're doing creatively is simply creating, is making the art itself. And people just want to see that and engage with that. And so during the pandemic, the fact that you were able to not just perform, but again, tune in or have people tune in to you made people feel like they had some sense of agency in your career, like that they were engaging in your career.
Yes. And
So that's cool for you.
yeah, man. And so 2020 was made a lot better for me because of the Grand Hotel, because of Mackinac Island, because of all the people that come to Mackinac Island, you know, and all the people that we collaborate over the course of a season. Um, those things really came really intersected during that period of time, and coming to the Grand Hotel ever since the first time I went out there in 2018. I've gone back every season, and I currently just finished my fifth season at the end of October, and next year in 2023 will be my sixth season working.
Huge.
And my personal goal is to do 10 seasons before I uh, consider other options. For my
Well, to pick up on that, I was actually just going to ask. We can probably find some way of wrapping it up. I imagine, as much as you love and are fulfilled by the Grand Hotel, there are still some wants or personal accomplishments or goals that you'd like to have, but you have your short term and your long term. Your short term is your 10-year plan. Your long term, you might not even have. You certainly don't have to have. But what are some of the other things that you have going on in your life creatively that help fulfill you a little bit, that people can either, tune into? I guess this is an opportunity for you to plug a little bit. Where are some avenues people can follow you? What are some endeavors that you pursue outside of the Grand Hotel?
Sure. Yeah. So mostly that's what I do for half the season. And then the other part of the year, I kind of devote that time to teaching young
Great.
students. Um,
Great.
and it starts with the holiday season. I'll come back to New Jersey. I'll start with doing teaching. Then we'll do recitals and things of that nature. And then I'm more of just a freelance artist. The best way to kind of tune into what I'm doing is, of course, through social media, through my Instagram and Facebook
Mhm.
accounts, because when I do have performances, I will, of course, post them there. But I go into a different gear once the Grand Hotel ends, because when I'm there, it's really full throttle, 7 nights a week for like months.
Yeah.
So I kind of, for um, my own personal health and satisfaction, I kind of had to switch gears after that, and I go into more of a teaching mode, a more relaxed season, and then I spend time outside of New York. I have, we didn't speak much about the Glenn Miller Orchestra, but I
Oh yeah.
went I went on 2 tours with the Glenn Miller Orchestra this year, which allowed me to travel all across the US and Canada, and, those are opportunities that I'm always open for when I'm not at the Grand Hotel because I have another 6 months to kinda do what I need to do with. So I'll do some teaching, and then this year, 2022, I had the chance to go on tour for 2 months. So if any of those opportunities ever come up again, those are things that I'm always interested in doing. I like to go on tour, performing different things, travel, and stuff of that nature. But I'm more in a different mode. Like the performance aspect of my career really is concentrated on Mackinac Island. And for people to come there and they can see me do my thing there. But when I'm not there, it's more of a freelance sort of thing. I spend
Sure.
time outside of New York. I might go on tour with a different band. So the best thing for me is just to follow me on my social media accounts to see what I'm up to.
Plug
Instagram.
them. Plug them. What do you got? Instagram, social media,
Yeah,
or Instagram, YouTube?
yeah, Instagram would be G Skills in that, GSKILLZZ, two Z's. And then Facebook, just my full name, Gil Scott Chapman, and feel free to connect with me on both of those services. And I'm, when anything comes up, it always ends up there. And I'm currently, well, after the holiday season, I'll start planning for my next Mackinac Island engagement.
Cool.
So in between now and then, just more freelance teaching, working with younger students, things of that nature.
This is where I'll insert an ad for the Grand Hotel, sponsored by. No, if only. All right. Well, for what it's worth, I'm gonna have you hang out on the line before we officially wrap our conversation here. But as far as the podcast goes, thank you for doing this, man.
Yeah.
This was huge. I'm glad that you were actually so willing to just do it because, like I said, we've only crossed paths for a quick, maybe hour at the bar, and I've just seen what you post on social media, and it is a lot of like positive, inspirational quotes along with what you're doing. And I knew right away. You can kind of suss out who the proper people will be for this podcast. Of course, we had the initial conversation about like, let's talk about what it's like to travel as a musician or what it's like to just deal with arts in the creative space. But it doesn't have to be about that. And so we were able to kind of talk about life and things outside of that. And I could sense that through social media that you were capable of that. So I appreciate you bringing that to this podcast because ultimately, the end goal for me, I say end goal, but the future business goal is to create some sort of company where I can supply creative jobs to people who wouldn't otherwise have them. So for right now, this podcast feels like a medium to like allow creatives in my life who I feel like don't have quite the proper attention that they deserve to just like talk about what it's like. So I feel like that is a way for people to plug themselves or, just therapeutically talk about things. So again, just to double down, I appreciate you being here, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It works both ways, man. Thanks for thinking that, my story was interesting enough for a podcast.
Of course.
And, it's, I'm always open to do things like this when people reach out in a genuine way. And, it's really a pleasure for me as well, just to get to know, get a feel for other people, and clearly you get a chance to deal with all sorts of other people too. So,
and for what it's worth, in theory, this thing is weekly and will go for as long as I can possibly manage it. So maybe there's space for you to come back.
Oh yeah, that'd be great, man. Of course,
cool,
man. We'll stay in touch on social media. And I have one question for you. What does ADH stand for?
As in you've read it as A.D.H.Deep-Dive.
Yeah.
So it's ADHD. So it's the ADHD. Essentially, it's A.D.H.D. Deep Dive.
Oh.
But yeah, it's just a little play on the phrase because the tag at the front of the show is Welcome to the A.D.H. Deep Dive, the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists.
Okay.
So essentially, the intro I have for every episode is just kind of teasing the audience about what I talk about with the guest. So I'll put a little graphic up on screen of who you are, give a this is my report breakdown, bullets of like here's the few headline things we talked about, and then I roll the podcast. So a lot of it is just we may or may not talk like I message you. We might talk about traveling. We didn't do a whole lot of travel conversation because I have ADHD and I can't stay on topic. but the through line is we're going to talk about art and what it's like to either deal with the internal struggles or the the highs and lows of what it's like to create that art. So it's funny that it might not be as on the nose as I thought it was, that it's ADHD. So
Yeah,
cool. Works for me.
yeah, that's cool, man. And I hope you feel that you have some good content to work with.
Yes, absolutely. No, this was great.
Yeah, yeah. As you can, I've shared so many things about. I've shared so much with you that really I think could give you a window into how I am. So, I mean, I spent all that time in Interlock, and
Yeah.
although part of me is introverted, I'm a people person at nature. I mean, I've been in cabins with random people
Yeah.
all the time, and I'm that type of person. I like to speak to random people throughout my day.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm closed off depending on what I'm going through, but opportunities like this for me to connect with another individual like yourself is also a real blessing. So, thanks for giving your time too. So,
Of course, man. And again, just to pick up on what you said there, like to be an artist in this day and age, especially a musician who's collaborating with other artists, that extroversion is sort of necessary sometimes. You gotta let it all out. But that being an introvert is just your, deep exhale before the inhale of extroversion comes out again.
yeah,
So
yes, you understand it quite well. So, you said it better than I could have. So, yeah, man. I mean, I'm always happy to do this, and I'll be tuning into your podcast too with your other guests.
cool.
I saw some guests that piqued my attention. I want to see what they're talking about. So, we'll go ahead.
John is a great conversation, and the person right before that was my music instructor, Frank Youngman, who actually has taught some master classes at Interlochen before. He's a touring jazz musician as well.
Wow, you got
He's
three. Because I know John Paul probably has done some stuff at Interlaken too. I mean, living up
yeah,
there.
he's done some shows with Drew Hale. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, and then I saw you had a lady actress. You had an actress
from one of the she was Snow White.
Yeah, I think you
Yep.
had a. Are we on the roll now too? By the way, are you rolling?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was saying you did. There was an episode that I wanted to finish on eating disorders. I thought was very interesting.
Oh, yep. Yeah, that was with Emily Miller. Yeah, she was in the. That was Snow White from the Princess Party.
Yeah, I'm always when I see things like that, I'm always interested in them because I've noticed with all of our different respective illnesses that we all suffer from, all of us have different things. There's so many common denominators in how we all deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all when I see something like that, oh, about an eating disorder, I'm curious to see how did this person deal with this? How did they overcome this obstacle? Because there might be something that can be helpful to me in the obstacles that I deal with in my life
Right.
if I read about this person who went through this eating disorder. So like these things, thanks for doing what you do, man, because some of us really do. It does impact some of us who deal with day to day things. When it makes a difference to see what other people are going through and how that it can help us get through our own challenges.
Well, thank you for saying that, man. I appreciate it. I think that's why I have refused to pigeonhole myself into talking to any subset of creators. Like, I'm not just going to talk to actors. I'm not just going to talk to musicians. Any artist who is vulnerable enough to put their art out there, I feel like has the ability to have a conversation about why they do it. So really, it's just I appreciate the compliment in that it's something that I'm doing, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't partially selfish. Like I want to gain this insight too from the people who have these stories to share. So I thought it.
That's to be, man. Yeah, that's the human nature part of us. Sure, we're gonna be invested in what we're doing, man.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. So yeah, Man, keep up the great work, man, and I'm looking forward to seeing what some of your other guests coming up to see what you got going
Cool.
on, man. It's and we'll stay in touch, man. Hopefully, I'll run into you again on Mackinac Island, man.
Yes, that would be super cool. I think I'm going to do it again next year. So
Yeah, I like I said, I'm trying to hit that 10-year mark, so you can plan on seeing me for a while.
sweet,
Plan on going up there, and
sweet.
yeah, man, we'll be in touch. And like I said, we'll stay in touch about this.
Yep.
You're gonna have to do some editing and things.
Yeah, I'll actually here's what I'll do. I'll end the podcast here, and then you go ahead and hang out on the line, and we'll just have some quick footnotes about it. But again, Gil Scott Chapman, thank you very much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate being here, buddy.
Thank you, man.
Peace
All
out.
right. All right.